family doctor was actually standing at the foot of my bed, um, in tears, actually.
We're building Healhub, a digital platform where people can share their health journeys and what helped them. Bob, I'm really happy for you being here, and I really enjoyed our conversation before. And I've been thinking about sort of like, what you went through and also all the things that you've done in terms of building communities. And I would love for you to talk about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm happy here to be here, and yeah, I enjoyed our earlier conversations, and yeah, I'm happy to share any insights I can lend you after doing this for 30 years, and yeah, being here for all of the technological advances that have happened.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I mean, a lot of things are happening. So again, you were introduced to me by Craig Stewart, and he had told his story about what cluster headaches was, and before that, I had really no idea. I was aware of, migraines and things like that, but this is something a new territory, and, I would love for you to so when did you actually start having these things? Because this is sort of, like, personal to you also.
yeah, I'm certainly a patient and an advocate, and yeah, I don't know. I quit counting years a while back, but it's at least 48 years that I've had cluster headaches. I got my first one when my oldest son was very young, and we were outside one spring day playing football, actually, and my head started to hurt, and I came into the house and sat down on the couch, and within 10 minutes, I was on my hands and knees, banging my head on the floor with a pain that I don't know. There are no words to describe the amount of pain that I was in. Um, Not knowing if I was going to die, if I was having an aneurysm. I didn't know a lot of medical stuff. I had been pretty healthy up until that point. Um, and we were trying to figure out what it was that caused it, figure out what was going on. Should we call an ambulance? Should I go into the emergency room? Um, and by the time we were ready to call 911, the pain started to subside, and it was completely gone in 5 minutes after it started to subside. So it came on really quickly and went up to the highest pain level really quickly within 5 minutes. And then when it was time to go, it was gone in 5 minutes, completely gone. No residual headache, nothing. And it was just a matter of asking what the hell was that. I hope that doesn't happen again. Um, and it, it, I'm sorry, let me shut this phone off.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's like with a migraine or headaches and things like that, they kinda linger and you sort of like they slowly disappear, but so these are like they come
yeah,
instantly almost and then, disappear, like
yeah, yeah. And yeah, it was over in under an hour. It was probably about 45 minutes, start to finish. And yeah, I had no idea what it was until I had another one the next day in the afternoon, the same time. I don't know what day it was, probably another weekend. It was probably like on a Saturday and Sunday. And the exact same thing happened again. And I had no idea what it was. Um, but I was assuming and hoping that it was going to go away as quickly as the last one did. And it did. Then we started trying to figure out what the hell could be causing it. And were thinking maybe it was the furnace because it was still cool enough in the evenings that my furnace was kicking on. So I ended up calling my heating guy to check out the furnace and the flue and the fireplace and all that. And he had found some blockages. So then I thought, well, maybe that's what it was. But the headaches continued and on a regular basis, and they were all lasting the same and just as terrible on the intensity. And so that started me on my journey of trying to find out what was going on. And it took 4 years to get diagnosed. Um, I first went to my um, family doctor and told him what was going on. And he thought that since it was in the spring, maybe it was some allergies or a sinus infection. So we started working on that theory that it was a sinus infection and tried some different things and they weren't working. So tried some stronger medications and they finally went away. So we thought that that's what it was, that it was some sinus medications that had taken. So the next spring, they came back again at the same time of the year. So I went right back to my doc and had him prescribe the sinus medication he'd prescribed earlier, and it didn't help at all. The headaches kept on going for over a month, and probably lasted a couple of months at that point. So then I ended up, um, I don't know, going through a whole list of different doctors. Went to my dentist because the pain kind of traveled down to my lower jaw and felt like a toothache, but up in my temple area.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there was some pain in my jaw and my teeth. And so then I spent the whole next cycle having dental work done, had some root canals done, um, even though nothing was showing up on x-rays. Had 2 root canals on the one tooth that was bothering me the most, and those didn't work. I get the root canal done and wait a week and it was still there, so I went back in. He thought, well, maybe I missed part of the nerve, and he did a second root canal and that didn't work. So then we pulled the tooth and um, I don't know, my cycle probably ended shortly after that. So then I probably thought it was my tooth.
Mm-hmm.
But then they came back again the next year and the cycle lasted about 3 months. And I went to see a chiropractor among some other stops and trying some other things. The chiropractor told me that, well, oh yeah, I treat headaches like this all the time. If I haven't, if I haven't cured you in like 3 visits, then you probably have a brain tumor.
Mm.
Like, okay, well, I guess that's an option. Hopefully it's not. But after 3 trips to see the chiropractor, my clusters were worse. So then I'm thinking, well, I've probably got a brain tumor. Went and had acupuncture, had all kinds of things. Nothing worked. Um, Went and had a brain scan done looking for a tumor. And the doctor was really happy when he came out and said that, well, good news, there's no tumor.
Right.
And actually I was really kind of devastated because by that time, 4 years in, and I still don't know what it is, and I still don't have anything to treat these things. And now every year was 3 months long. And work was difficult. Home life was difficult. I mean, I was fairly young, starting a family, and yeah, so I ended up getting an appointment at the Diamond Headache Clinic, um, and I went in there, and 5 minutes after I talked to the doctor, it was the first time I ever heard the words cluster headaches, and he diagnosed me within 5 minutes. just asked a few questions and said, "Yep, you've got cluster headaches." I'm like, "What are those?"
Yeah.
Um, so then for the next 4 years, I was being treated there and going into an inpatient setting that would usually take about 2 weeks. It was a histamine treatment on an IV for 2 weeks, where you go through a couple of bags of low dose histamine to try to desensitize myself to histamine, um, because it's one of the triggers that's kind of known that can have this, or they see higher levels with people with clusters. And the first time it worked really good the first time. Like within 2 weeks, my cycle had ended early. The second year, it worked pretty well. Um, Probably took away 75% of my pain levels. Third year, it didn't do very much, and then I still went back to the fourth year and it didn't do anything at all. So then we ended up starting a whole list of different things. And over the next 16 years, I had tried 70 different prescription medications, none of
Wow.
which worked. None of which worked at all, other than um, high flow oxygen, um, that I was finally able to get prescribed and taught how to use it properly. That wouldn't stop any attacks, but I could treat each attack and get them to end a little bit quicker. Um, so yeah, out of 70 prescriptions, that's the only one that gave me any relief at all.
So
The
in
first 20
16
years I had
years.
to, yeah, in the first 20 years I had these, but I hadn't tried prescription meds to treat the headaches other than things for sinus infection and other things. Um, the heaviest painkillers on the market, I was on those. I was on, yeah, all kinds of things that really did not work.
So even like
Um,
morphine or like really super strong
right.
painkillers
I,
would not touch
I
it?
even didn't touch it at all. I tried, um, well, I guess it's fentanyl now, I guess.
Uh-huh.
I tried the fentanyl patches, um, and that didn't help at all.
Wow.
And those were at levels that were being prescribed for treating cancer pain. So, and didn't help at all. If I put it on before the attacks, it would just blast its way right past the effects of a uh, opiate or painkiller. Um, I was um, I was hospitalized one time, and um, the only reason I was because I wouldn't go to the ER because they wouldn't know how to treat it. But I was actually in a hospital with my visiting my father, who was in the hospital. I started getting an attack, and I walked to the emergency room and told them what I had, and they gave me really a high enough dose of morphine to knock me out. But that would only last for about an hour, and when the morphine wore off, my cluster would come back, so they would just come in and give me another shot. And they gave me 18 shots in a row, 1 hour for 18 hours. And my wife called our family doctor, had me transferred against doctor's orders. They sent an ambulance, had me transferred to a hospital that my doctor was working at, and um, got me well enough, anyways, that I could go home. So, yeah,
So that sounds like you were literally in the hospital for like almost like a whole day, 24 hours, and you would just keep getting like
they just
sort of
kept
like
knocking me out.
knocking you out.
It was like 100 milligrams of morphine that they were giving me, injecting. Um, so yeah, 1,800 milligrams of morphine in 18 hours. And my wife was just like, "You're going to kill him. I have to take him out of here. You have no idea what you're doing." And every time I would start coming out of it, I would be moaning in pain so that they would just shut me up again with another shot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand that process. It's like, it's sort of like, how does that even I mean, I know that they probably were desperate and they didn't know what to do. They had no knowledge of this, I imagine, right? Or something like
Yeah.
that. They just did not know.
Yeah.
Um, but like you're saying, it's like, yeah, that sounds really bad. That sounds really dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so for them to actually even do that, I don't know how that was part of a general protocol to treat somebody in any kind of pain. Um, just to keep on pumping morphine into me, um, until it was enough to knock me out.
Right.
But then not do anything or figure out what it might be that I'm suffering from, you know,
And the thing
no.
is, normally with the clusters, they would kinda, like, come, right? Uh, but after a while, they would go away, but during this period when you were there, they would keep coming back?
Yeah, as soon as the morphine would wear off, they came back again. Um, it something about clusters where it always seemed to me that my clusters were telling me that, "Look, I'm gonna give you this much pain, and you're gonna get it one way or another. You can put it off if you want, but we're about to give you 45 minutes of extreme pain, and if you put it off with anything, you're still gonna get that 45 minutes of extreme pain. And if it has to come at, in 5-minute intervals, that's the way it was gonna be." And that's the way it always seemed to me that, um, my body
Oh,
was gonna give me that much pain one way or the other no matter what I did. Yeah.
right, so it's almost like they were kinda pushing it out because you were does that make sense? So that
Yeah,
you're sort of it's
yeah,
like you have to
I
get
mean,
this period of pain.
yeah, but I I wasn't aware, but it seems to me that I was in pain while I was out because, um, I didn't know it, but when I woke up in that other hospital, not knowing where I was, my family doctor was actually standing at the foot of my bed, um, in tears, actually. I still remember him. He was my doctor for 40 years, at some point. Um, but and he knew that I had these headaches 'cause he was the first one that tried treating me and trying to find something. But he was just in tears, and he just told me when I woke up, he said he was just so apologetic that, you know, he had no idea how much pain it was that I was going in to see him about, and that he hadn't been able to help me. Um, but he could see it, I guess, on my face or while he was there observing me while I was knocked out. Um, and I don't know what he had given me or what they did while I was there, but when I came out of it, um, I wasn't in another cluster. I mean, when I woke up, the clusters had ended, but I didn't know where I was because I had been transferred without my knowledge. I was knocked out when they took me to the different hospital.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was my first 20 years, um, and that was, I don't know, the mid-90s when after 20 years. So it was the mid-70s that I started these. So yeah, it's,
In terms of life, how did you deal with it? Because like, I can't even try to imagine how difficult that would especially kinda coming up to the period where they might be coming, and just
yeah.
life-wise dealing with it.
Yeah, that's one of the toughest parts of this, besides the pain, it's all of us knowing when it's going to come, uh, because they're all pretty much set to a daily clock. If you're going to have one at 2 in the afternoon on Tuesday, you're going to have one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon until your cycle ends. So at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you start preparing for what's going to happen at 2. Um, REM sleep triggers a lot of them. So um, if you go to bed at midnight, um, you're probably going to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning and then get through an attack, try to get another hour's sleep, and then maybe be triggered again for another one. Um, I've gone 3 months without ever sleeping more than an hour at a time because REM sleep would trigger them. So I stay up, and most of us stay up as long as we can, as late as we can, and get up as early as we can, and I just fill the night with 1 hour, intermittent attacks, um, and getting through those. So looking forward to that, and then they start the same year every time, within days. You know, if yours starts September 15th, they're going to start September 15th every year within 2 or 3 days, either way.
Wow.
And then you know that you're in for 3 months or 6 weeks or whatever it is. So, yeah, so all those first 20 plus years, I went through 2 3-month long cycles every year. That my spring cycle ended up um, starting over again in the fall. So then I would go from 3 months starting in September and 3 months starting in January or February, something like that. And then so for 20 years or close to it, um, I spent 6 months out of every year in cycle, and then 3 months break in between each cycle, um, having 4 to 6 attacks a day. So, yep.
Wow.
So it's difficult earning a living for most people. Um, if it takes some of us 20 years to find a job that'll allow us to work on schedules that we can work. I ended up starting. I I started out working in a family business in construction, and then ended up branching off and just myself in construction. Um, and I could pretty much control my own schedule, but I had to get up early in the morning to get all my guys off to work and get the business going, and then start my day with having attacks throughout the day, and then be up until 2 o'clock in the morning doing book work or whatever for the business.
Wow.
So I would had to be my own boss because I was the only person that could afford to keep me as an employee. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of people 10, 15 years to find a job that they can keep and keep a roof over their heads. So then it's tough for them to, um, if there's a clinical trial around that they want to get into, if they have to travel to it and be there for 10 days, they're afraid to even do that because they're afraid to lose their job. And then come back and spend 10 more years trying to find another job that'll keep them around. So, um, yeah, but the post-traumatic stress that these things cause is really terrible. And they finally came up with a new name for it where it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, because it's not something that happened 15 years ago. It's something that happened an hour ago, and it's going to happen again in 2 hours. So,
Yeah, I mean, the word
yeah,
that comes to my mind is
tough.
torture. I mean, it's absolute sounds absolutely horrific.
Yeah, it's it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And there really aren't words to describe it. I've had a couple of doctors that are advocates trying to get awareness out there, and they're like, "So what's like one line you can tell me that kind of describes what it's like to have cluster headaches, or what you go through, or the pain of them?" And I'm like, "Well, that's the toughest question that anybody can ever ask me because there are no words in the English language that can describe what everybody goes through and the pain level. You know, everybody has a level 10 pain, whatever that is in their life. You know, if the worst pain they ever felt was falling down and breaking their leg, um, then that's their number 10. Um, but yeah, we've done some research and some studies on pain levels, and everybody that has filled out those surveys, they compare it to what their previous number 10 was. Um, what is the most painful thing that you've lived through other than clusters? And how do you rate things now? So clusters were at a 10, and childbirth was at a 7.5, and uh, you know, gunshot wounds are at 6, and getting stabbed with a knife was a 5, and um, but those were all their 10s before they got cluster headaches. So,
Yeah.
let's- so it's hard to come up with a word that anybody else would understand. You know,
No, I
so
don't think anyone can understand it unless you've been through it. It's one of those things, language cannot, you know, express it.
you
Um,
know,
so after, a while, so like not a while, a long time, you were trying a lot of different things, trying desperately to, find some solution. Now you knew what it was, but you still were on that search of figuring out how can I get better?
yeah. So that started a long journey for the next 30 years, basically. I went online. Those were the early days of the internet. I finally took one of those AOL discs that had been in my mail for a long time. I probably had 50 discs around. People used to use those to decorate their Christmas trees.
Yeah, I
So,
remember those discs, they came in by the mail.
yeah. So I grabbed one and loaded it into my computer and started out that whole process with America Online, where you would sign in it over your telephone and listen to those strange sounds that it would make while it was connecting.
Mhm. Yep.
And after the first month, I found out what it was costing me. I got a $300 phone bill
Oh, no.
after being on AOL for a month. But the reason I signed on was to look to find out if there was any information on treating cluster headaches.
Yes.
Um, and the only thing that was around at that point where you could talk to other people was a thing called Usenet, and there were networks that you could join on anything you wanted to join about that were being set up, and these what they were called were news groups um, that you could either start and had to get permission to start one. Um, I don't know, there was a few people somewhere that nobody knew where they were or who they were that would give you permission to start one of these groups. And I ended up finding a migraine group online. There was nothing about clusters anywhere. Um, the early search engines, that was back when Netscape was around, and they were fighting with Google and Microsoft and whomever for um, different programs and search engines. And there was absolutely nothing online about cluster headaches. Nothing. Even the different medical groups that started getting websites set up, there was nothing about cluster headaches. But I ended up finding a news group for migraine, and there were 400 people all over the world in this group. And I joined that and just started sharing stories with other people most of them had migraine. It turned out that there were 3 or 4 of us with cluster headache. Um, so we would share our own stories with each other, and then other people in the migraine community that would have different suggestions of what they were using at that point. Um, eventually, Imitrex came out, which was really helpful for migraine. Um, it was also very helpful for clusters, um, but they were very expensive injections. You could only get your insurance to pay for 6 of them a month, and every injection would only treat one cluster headache attack. Um, so if I was having 4 a day, I would want to use 4 of the 6 injections in one day. And then there were health issues with how many you should be using every day. But within a few days, all of your injections were gone, and then you were on your own the rest of the month for clusters. Um, so, that was a partial help, but not very much help for people with clusters. Um, they started out with just tablets to use, and that worked fine for people with migraine because they could wait an hour for it to start working. But for clusters, your attack was gone within an hour anyways. So you just took a pill, took an hour for it to start working, and your headache was gone anyways. Um, and then they came out with the injections, which worked a lot faster, um, but then ended up, um, the group that I was in started talking about it after a few years, and we realized that the more people used of the Imitrex, the worse their cycles got.
Mhm.
If they were getting 4 a day after using these injections for a year, they were up to 6 attacks a day, and the attacks were lasting longer, and they were more intense. They were finding a new level 10. Um, but if you had an injection sitting there and you went into an attack, you would use it. It's like, I can't, it's sitting there, I'm going to use it.
Yes.
So
Oh,
you can just
absolutely.
use it.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and I don't care about tomorrow. I need this one to end right now. Um, so we started talking to some of our doctors, and they eventually ended up doing a clinical trial to check that out, and then did discover that the Imitrex injections were making everyone's cluster headache cycles worse. Um, and there was nothing else being researched at all for clusters. Um, anything that might pop up on research was very preliminary stuff, looking at, um, you know, different things on how mice would react in the brains of mice and rats and things like that. Very preliminary, that at that point would all be 10 years down the road before there was actually anything if they had something. Um, so what ended up happening was I had met a few of these cluster people online, and after a couple of years, there were some more things going on online that you could do. And a friend of mine started a cluster headache web page that had a message board where people started talking and sharing their own stories. Um, so I joined that, but I spent most of my time in the migraine group still with all my friends there, and then directing anybody that showed up with cluster headaches to find the new cluster headache website. So I was directing people over there, and then really managing both of those groups, um, in my spare time. And end up working all day, come home, eat dinner, and then get online and be online until 4 o'clock in the morning every night during and in between my cluster cycles, and sharing stories. And everybody in the group with clusters were sharing whatever it was that they were doing to get them through the day and survive their clusters. And everybody had different little tricks that they were doing to get them through the day. And so one of the first things that we had discovered was some of the people that had actually found that taking like Tabasco sauce and putting it under their lip or under their tongue that would really start burning. They were doing that just to kind of take their mind off of the pain, but sometimes it would seem to help them. Um, and we ended up working, or I ended up working with a company called Winston Labs, who was coming up with was looking at research into, I'm trying to think of the name of um, what it is, but um, they ended up coming out with a product called Civamide, which used the ingredient in like hot peppers to make it hot, um, and made like a nasal spray, um, which further research going down the line, and it's still kind of used in a lot of different areas now, where it blocks the pain pathways, um, and is still used in some nasal sprays for pain management of all sorts. Um,
Interesting.
and yeah, and that was one of the things that came out of our group. Just people talking and sharing stories that seemed to help them. Um,
Right, I mean, that's wild that someone was I mean, again, I imagine you're gonna try anything and everything, and the person was just probably trying to sort of like, somehow find a balance between or you probably can't find the balance, but the pain is so intense, so let me try something else that's intense and, putting
yeah,
on the
well, yeah, people still try all sorts of self harm that
Mm,
happens at working their way up to suicide eventually in some cases, and way too many cases.
right.
Um, but yeah, people share stories, and all of us would do the same thing. I mean, if I tell this story all the time in this analogy that if you have spaghetti for dinner and your 8 o'clock attack doesn't happen, you'll have spaghetti for dinner every night until your cycle ends, trying to duplicate the effects of, well, maybe it was something, you know, raising the acidity in my system or something.
Right.
You find something that changes things and you adopt it as something else that you try to do. Um, and so, based on that, I eventually started my group, Cluster Busters, um, really to increase the amount of research going on because there was no research going on at all. Um, and I know how long research takes to actually get to the patient. It's like there's nothing that we're going to get within 10 years because nothing's going on. Um, so I started talking to a lot of doctors, a lot of drug manufacturers, a lot of universities and researchers. I'd find some research going on in headache disorders and reach out to that doctor or that investigator and find out if they wanted to do some research for clusters. Um, and what happened um, in the early 2000s was while people were sharing stories to the group, somebody from a young guy from Scotland came on to the group and just asked if anybody had ever heard anything about research into psychedelics and specifically LSD to treat cluster headaches. Because the story he told was that just like we all did, like I was mentioning with the spaghetti,
Mhm.
one of his cycles didn't start in the fall like it always had for years. So he tried figuring out what it is that he might have done that summer that stopped his next cycle from starting. And he went through everything, took notes of everything, looked at calendars. The only thing he could find that he had done differently that year was he had used LSD recreationally twice at some concerts, and he did a little bit of research looking into LSD, and it actually turned out that when LSD was discovered by Dr. Hoffman, he was actually working for Sandoz and working on a couple of different things. One was um, he was working with ergotamine, looking at um, vascular issues and um, bleeding and things like that, and looking at the vascular system, because at that point, migraine and clusters were always thought to be vascular headaches. Thinking that it was swelling of some blood vessels that were pinching on nerves and whatever. And he was also working on headache disorders and with the ergotamines, because ergotamines was one of the treatments for migraine headache. Um, and he invented LSD and put it up on a shelf for several years, and then decided to take a look at it and took what he thought was a very low dose of LSD and then got on his bicycle to ride home in Switzerland
Mhm.
and had his first LSD trip on the way home. Uh, they still celebrate that day. It's called Bicycle Day in the psychedelic world.
Yes.
Um, it that was just a week ago or something like that. So, um, anyways, a couple of us in the online group did as much research as we could on psychedelics and saw a little bit of evidence that had been around from the 50s and 60s, and how close a molecule it was to the things that were treating headaches with the ergotamines, and decided to test it on themselves to see if it might work. Um, but LSD at that point, and still is, just really difficult to access and know where to go to buy it or get it, and if you could trust who you're buying it from and all that. Um, so we did some research and found out that um, magic mushrooms, the psilocybin, is almost identical to LSD as a molecule, and that you could grow your own. So a few of us started growing our own mushrooms to be able to test it, and had unbelievable, fantastic results with them. Uh, it would not only um, stop an attack. If you took a couple of doses, it might actually end the entire cycle early. And
Wow.
there's still is nothing on the market now that can do that, um, as well as psychedelics. Um, people can end a cycle that usually lasted 3 months in 10 days, sometimes 5 days, sometimes 15 days, but they can end it early. Um, if their cycle starts and they can't find any mushrooms for 3 weeks, they can still take a few doses and end the cycle early. And we found out, because we were all testing all sorts of different things because science wasn't testing it out, but we found that we could replicate what had happened to the kid in Scotland.
Yep.
If you take a couple doses before your cycle, you can actually eliminate the entire cycle from actually happening.
Wow, that's amazing. So what
Yeah,
kind of levels of doses were that?
yeah. Um, Fairly low doses. They're much lower than a recreational dose. They're much lower than the doses that people use for treating mental health conditions like depression or post
Yeah.
traumatic stress or all that. Um, they're usually using 3.5 grams or something like that of the equivalent of mushrooms to treat those. Um, most cluster people find relief at between 1 gram and 1.5 grams. Um, Very rarely does it take any more than that to treat it. A bigger dose doesn't work any better or any faster. And in some cases, it doesn't work nearly as well because, you know, the crash coming down from 3.5 grams, it kind of messes with the system too much. You don't need to mess with it that much. So for your body to recover from that high of a dose, it doesn't break the cycle as quickly as a lower dose. We found that out basically because when people were breaking their cycles with a gram, other people with clusters would hear that and they'd find out that, well, they took 1 gram in 3 different doses 5 days apart. Mine are really bad. Why not do 3 grams all at once and maybe end it after one dose?
Right.
And that didn't work nearly as well. So then those people would go back to the lower doses and break their cycle. So we know that the higher doses don't work as well. But if people don't educate them enough in the very beginning, that's the first thing that they always think of is how bad theirs are and how quickly they want to end the cycle. So there's still a lot of people that start out with a higher dose than we recommend, um, and then come back saying, "Well, that didn't work very well."
Right. Right.
And then, so then I would have to personally walk every one of those people through the process the right way. And yeah, over that 30 years, I know that I've talked to over 10,000 people personally and walked them personally through the process.
Wow. That is truly amazing. I mean, that is truly
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, and I guess, yeah, so the challenges right now is also sort of like, I imagine is actually sort of like, in some areas it's legal, some areas it's not, right? So it's one of those things where you wish that everyone could get it, but some might not be able to get access to it.
right. 48 of the 50 states, people have to break the law to use them.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
that
some
is
are
just tragic.
it's tragic and it's so frustrating. And um, even in the states that they can actually access it, which are Colorado and Oregon, um, to legally get it, they need to go to one of the approved providers, um, and they're all set up to treat mental health disorders. Um, and that isn't really helpful for people with cluster headaches. Number one, the doses are too high.
Yes.
And if you're going into a cluster cycle, it doesn't help to call and make an appointment for 6 weeks down the road to go in and get an interview to see if you qualify to use it, um, and then get an incorrect dose, and then have to go through a month or two of follow up sessions with therapists and psychiatrists and all that, and pay $5,000 for the privilege, um, because yeah, governments are getting involved and things get really expensive when that happens, and um, all the different restrictions, get applied. Um, and for people with headache disorders, they need to be able to take that low dose at home when they need it, and not call up and wait 6 weeks for it. They need to take it at home because they're the ones that know when they need to dose. They know
Right. Yes.
if
Yes.
if they need an extra dose, if they take their first dose and things are really good for a couple days, and then the clusters start coming back um, after 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 days. That's the day that they know that they need to take another dose, and that's not the day for them to call up and ask for another dose and have to get it in a hospital or a therapist's office or anything else. They need that low dose at home so that they can take it, and they're the ones that know better than any doctor or anybody else when they need that dose.
Yeah,
But
that
because
reminds me a little bit about my because I've had I still have eczema, but I had some very, very severe eczema on and off, and one of my problems was that, I didn't know when it would come, and my attacks was, like, super s basically, my whole face would just I would have to stay in bed, and sometimes I was forced because I was like, I needed the prednisone, and I didn't have access to it, so I'd literally have to go to the doctor without an appointment. My face would be just completely a mess, because, like, I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything without the
Right.
prednisone. So I
Right.
can totally understand, like, the need for, these people to have it they know what's going on, right? And they can't plan ahead, so it's like one of those things where you need it, uh, and yeah, I hope that, we find ways to make this possible, you know?
Yeah, that's what we're working on at the state level. Um, we're working now probably with about 12 different states that have legislation that's starting to be discussed. But even that is, a year or two or three down the road, and then they start out really with minimal effort put towards getting it actually to the patient, and starting research, or allowing research to go on, and then making sure that um, pain in general is part of that research, and not just mental health disorders. It doesn't do us any good for Maryland or Utah or Mississippi to approve, um, prescriptions for um, psilocybin, um, because we still can't access it when we need it and at the doses we need it and be able to bring it home. You know, all all these states are starting out with programs. The ones that are developed the furthest are, setting up hopefully facilities where people can go and get these treatments in the states. Um, but if pain isn't in the legislation, then you aren't allowed to go to those facilities because those facilities can't give psilocybin to anyone unless they have post-traumatic stress disorder or depression.
Right, it's like
Uh,
codes, right? It's insurance, all those things that
all all that stuff. So we're starting that process, working on that process, and it's going to be a one state at a time deal, and they'll all be on different timelines. And once we're learning now that um, all this legislation that's being written, once they pass something, they don't even want to look at it again for 3 or 4 years because once they start looking at it again, they have to deal with it in their reelection campaigns and their what else is important that is on their docket to pass legislation for. So to get back on the docket to even be discussed and go into committees for discussion, you've got one chance, and if you're not written into the legislation specifically, have to wait for the next round where they'll actually look at legislation for more people. Um, and with 40 million people with headache disorders, um, a Schedule One drug to be approved, uh, the government is really not really happy about the thought of um, granting access to 40 million people to a Schedule One drug.
so wait, so 40 so the 40,000,000, this is people with this is the broad pain
The,
level, like
for-
all kinds of different
yes,
pains, right?
yeah.
So
There's 160 plus different headache disorders,
right.
and some of them this will work for, some of them this won't work for. Some people with migraine have switched over to using these things illegally, um, and it helping a great deal. Um, but everyone's different. So until research starts going on, the right doses won't be discovered. The dosing patterns won't be discovered. Um, Getting access is going to be really difficult. This, I know a lot of people are really excited about this new executive order that was just signed, but um, we'll see if it helps at all. I mean, psilocybin got breakthrough therapy um, several years ago, and because of the research that we've done and that other people have done, where it actually works for people, it was given breakthrough therapy status years ago, and it hasn't helped at all because there's still a dozen different agencies involved and a dozen different um, other gatekeepers that will either start research or not, um, or fund research or not. You got to find somebody that will do the research with a Schedule One drug, um, which is difficult because it automatically adds millions of dollars to the research in all the rules that are laid out by the DEA, and um, it's really difficult to get people interested in researching a natural product that grows out of the ground that people
Yeah,
can grow themselves that can't get patented. So there's a lot of companies out there trying to patent molecules that are just changed a very little bit one way or another so that they can actually patent something and make at least enough money to pay for the research. Um, so we'll see if this new executive order does anything at all. Um, it's fine to have the executive order out there saying you can do this, but then a lot of people have to do it or it doesn't do any good. And, um, if one of the 10 people in line need to do something and they don't, everybody else in line doesn't do it. It doesn't get followed up upon.
yeah, you need multiple states. You need like, so that it starts become cascading in and saying, "This makes sense." I mean, it's so
Yeah,
frustrating. I like this is an emergency, right? I mean, this is real people suffering, and the suffering is not, this is not minor stuff. This is severe. A lot, there's multiple areas and, people having dealing with pain. I mean, pain is one of the worst things. I get so frustrated, like, um, this kinda makes me think about sort of like, how you started with your community because in a sense, you sort of like have been you took the choice where you said, "Okay, like, I have this, I've been reaching out," but you've also been helping a lot of people, uh, find this way, right? And it's like,
right.
what have you learned in this whole process,
Um, well, I've learned an awful lot, and a lot of it hasn't been good to find out. But I've learned how many gatekeepers are between somebody having a good idea and a patient actually being able to get help from that.
Mm.
There's years in between that happening, and there's tens or hundreds of $1 million in between that actually becoming available to the patient at the end. Um, and there are so many people that um, can stop it anywhere along the line, and which is really very frustrating. But um, I ended up building an incredible community of advocates and speaking for themselves. Um, this used to be a very isolating disorder where people that have cluster headaches uh, don't tell anybody they have cluster headaches because they can't get a job. Uh, they don't want their friends to stop calling them to go to a ball game because they know that well, Bob's got cluster attacks every day. He can't go to a ball game. They don't want their families to see them. So as soon as they feel the pain coming on, they'll leave the room and go and behind closed doors until the attack is over because they don't want anyone to see them going through that. You don't want your kids seeing their father or mother on their hands and knees, um, pounding their heads on the floor. Um, and the opposite end of that is uh, you don't want to be a parent watching your 8-year-old son on the floor banging his head and not be able to help him at all. Talk about frustrating. I mean, we have people that don't get married, or if they do, they don't have kids because they're afraid they're going to give their kids cluster headaches. The thought of that is a terrible fear. Um, there does seem to be some genetic connection, but we really don't know if there is or not. I mean, it's probably, what they think is maybe a 10% possibility of passing it down to your kids, or skipping a generation and getting handed down. I think that my one of my grandfathers had clusters, we think, but they weren't called clusters. They had no idea what it was. But um, so that's a big fear of people with clusters. But um, building this community and getting the advocates, it's uh, telling people you can't keep your mouth shut. You need to tell people that you need help. You need to start demanding help from the people that are standing in the way of getting you help. Um, so yeah, I've got people that are willing to go out and testify in front of Congress, testify in front of um, state committees, justice committees, and health committees. Um, speak out at different conferences. Where I was just at one last week where there were 15,000 neurologists at the conference, and they got to hear my research on DMT for cluster headaches. A lot of them don't know how to treat cluster headaches because, um, they're only going to see 1 or 2 cluster patients in their life if they're lucky, um, unless they're a headache specialist and go into that specialty. And there's less than 1,000 of them in the country that are certified in headache treatment. Some states have none. Uh, they're nowhere near to be available for people living on reservations. The underserved can't get to a neurologist. They can't get insurance to refer them to a neurologist, even if they could find one that knew about cluster headaches. Um, but the community itself supports each other and um, helps each other get through life with these things. So yeah, I'm really proud of the community that we built and being able to help everybody with cluster headaches that they come across, uh, and be willing to tell their story, because 30 years ago, nobody wanted to tell their story because they were afraid. And still a lot of people won't. I mean, if they're an entertainer, if they're in entertainment, making movies, or if they're making $20 million a year playing football, they don't want anybody to know that they have this disorder. They'll never get another contract. You know, people won't hire an actor if they think that, well, in the spring, we were going to film in the spring. Well, we can't hire this guy because, he's probably going to have his cluster headaches and we can't shut down production. So even those that have it are very quiet, just protect their career. And I don't blame them. And I've helped a lot of those people, you know, on the down low. And so,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just it's so sad. It's so I don't know. It's like I think it's a society, right? It's like we keep silence, and because we don't know anyone, or before we generally didn't know someone that had what we had, right? So there's a level of shame, there's a level of just no one can understand. but I wish that I hope I believe that actually, like, technology is making this where we can flip this, right? Where it's like there should be we should not be ashamed of being able to talk about what we're struggling with, and that there can be
Right.
some more humanity in the you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the more these patient communities grow and advocate and get the word out there, more people are willing to do that. And, they see somebody speaking out and making a difference, and they're willing to step out and, they get angry enough that, um, I'm sorry, society's going to have to bend to me. I can't bend to them anymore. And um, if, yeah, if they don't want to help me, then at least I've got a community that will help me. And, uh, in all these cases, medical science can't help me anyways. The reason I'm online looking for help and other advocacy organizations and other people that suffer from what I suffer from, the only reason I'm doing that is because society and our healthcare system or whatever isn't helping us enough. Um, so, that tells me right away that society isn't helping.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's sorta like, it's not the way it should be, but it's like the system is too complex and it's too big, and it's sort of like there's so many and I understand sometimes you try there's good intentions behind these things, but, um, I'm curious, I because 'cause I'm thinking about, like, your community, right, and people writing about what's going on, and I imagine that a lot of things as they're sharing they're sort of like what they're doing, that things are, like, popping up and saying, "Oh, I should try that," or, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that," and then through that, there's a filter going on that, you find things that work.
yeah, and one of the things that we've done in building our community is um, push for all kinds of research, all kinds of awareness for people to learn about uh, our community and that these things exist. Um, and we've gotten a lot of things through the FDA that are not related to psychedelics at all. Um, and if anybody has an idea that or research that I think might help my community, we support them. And we're still, we fought CMS at Social Security for 10 years to get them to cover oxygen. They
Yeah.
wouldn't cover oxygen for my community, which is talk about frustrating. Um, People have to go to a welding shop and lie and say that they're either a welder or they need these tanks to blow up, 1,000 balloons for their kid's party and get welding oxygen to treat their cluster headaches because they can't get a prescription for medical oxygen. And those tanks are filled from the exact same machine. They're just sold to different people. Um, so things like that. Um, we helped Eli Lilly develop their cluster headache um, treatment of injections that you get once a month that are helping a lot of people in my community. Not everyone, but a lot of them. Um, and they're the only company so far that has actually written that big check to do a phase 3 study for people with cluster headaches. And we've been around for 350 years in the medical journals. And they're the only that's the only phase 3 drug treatment available to people to prevent cluster headaches that's ever been approved by the FDA. And we worked really closely with them on that. We've worked closely and helped companies get different devices approved, um, and a lot of things. So my patient group and community has um, probably brought more things to the market for the cluster patients than medical science in total. Um, So we've gotten a lot of things brought to the market for the community that would not have been brought to the market without our
I
community and
I love that,
advocates
I
who,
love that. It's just, to me, it's like common sense, right? It's like it's people that are actually going through it, right? I mean, as a doctor, you learn about things, but you're not gonna know everything, right? And it's like and you haven't been through it. And so to me, it makes common sense, it's like, go
you
to the
know,
people who are going through it, and listen to them. Um,
yeah, yeah. Over the last probably 10 years, the FDA has actually been really good about trying to get the patients involved and telling these
oh, that's
drug
good.
companies that they need the patient voice um, in the process. Um, and it's the same with uh, NIH grant funding. They want to hear from the patient's story too, not just the drug manufacturers. Um, so the more we get out there and insert ourselves into these all these different levels, the more we're being heard. And um, yeah, so that's a good thing, but it's still taking so long. I mean, it shouldn't take. Like, we did a presentation at a conference last year, the end of last year, and gave a presentation on our research with psilocybin and cluster headache. Um, and what struck me was that it actually took. We've been doing this research since 2006, with our first paper published out of Harvard, and it took until just a couple of years ago for us to even present our research to a room full of doctors. Um, they have been the patients have been telling them that this works for since 2006, but it took a couple of mice under a microscope, their brains under a microscope, to show the proof that this stuff was reacting on the correct pain pathways that would actually be treating cluster headaches. So it took two mice to tell these doctors what patients have been telling them for almost 20 years. It took two mice for them to listen.
Yeah,
And
this is like where like dogma is happening, right? You have to, it has to go through the right channels. And this is these are the things that we know, whatever. And then it has to go through this, right? For where someone, I mean, it just, um, it should take 2 weeks. Or like, to me, it's like, like, if you know that something is safe, meaning I understand that you want to make
correct.
sure that whatever
Right.
people are doing is safe. Once it's
Right.
safe, there should be no question, and there should be like, "Okay, try it out." It's just it's wild.
Well,
Um,
yeah. And some countries do that. And that research is not accepted in our country. If you bring research from Germany to the FDA, they don't care. You got to redo it here. And, um, you know, in Germany, they have a uh, policy there that if you think you have something that's going to help people and you prove that it's safe,
mhm.
go ahead. That's all you need to go ahead and do the research and start giving it to people. If it's safe, give it to people. And we did that back in 2010 with a modified LSD molecule that showed fantastic results in 5 out of the 6 people that tried it that we were able to give it to.
Wow.
And that research meant nothing at all to our FDA, nothing. And so why put money and effort into that research? Find a research institution and a research team that'll do a larger study in Germany. It's still not going to be able to get anywhere in the U.S. You're still going to need to do that one and all the previous tests that they require. Um, and, you know, if we had gotten it to work on, 300 people in Germany, we probably could have gotten it approved in Germany, but they would still have us bring it back to the FDA and still giving it to mice and starting 10 years over. And most of, unfortunately, um, and I'm, the war on drugs as part of this is that um, a lot of other countries have to follow a lot of the same rules that the U.S. puts out there um, because of our stance. And we put pressure on other countries to follow our laws and our restrictions. And, um, not accepting their research is part of the pressure that they put on all the other countries to follow our rules and regulations and approval process and all of that. And extra billions of dollars in research and years in research in this country that um, to me is ridiculous, and it's costing lives. It's costing billions of dollars in the economy of people that can't work but would like to work. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
huge, huge medical bills that make people go bankrupt.
yeah.
It's very, very frustrating, and um, but what gives me hope is my cluster community and all the people that are working and speaking up and demanding results. And yeah, I'm a kid of the '60s, so I believe in protests and yeah, being heard and um, yeah. So,
No, totally.
anyways,
I mean, it's sort of like, you have to fight the fight because it's like, I mean, this is not small stuff. Uh, I'm curious, because I kinda I can try to see it from the science side. I totally get that, but it's one of those things, it's like sometimes it's way too the system, dogma, and all that stuff. On the other I'm curious in terms of like, the community and people sharing what they're doing. My question is, how often are things also maybe not right? And what kinda like have you know what I mean? Because part of me says that if you're actually going through things for real, meaning that this is actually you are going through this on your own, that you will share an honest, you will share honesty, right? Because you know that how difficult it is. But I'm
you
just
know,
curious of like, like have you in your community seen anything where people would be sharing things that might not even make sense? Like honesty, dishonesty, things like that?
um, yeah. Well, my community for sure is really good at um, researching what other people say,
Mhm.
whether or not what they're saying has any merit at all, or if they're just trying to sell some snake oil or just a guess of what they think will help. Um, you know, all ideas are welcome, but for them to get through our community is really difficult. But on the other hand, it's like we've had people come up with some really crazy ideas and, you know, but great. We'll have 10 people immediately start doing some research and work on it and determine whether or not it might have some merit and why this person is suggesting this. Why did they come up with this theory? And my community is, I don't know, I don't think it's um, widespread in all communities like this. I think we're kind of special and have developed this community over 25 and 30 years and how we work and how we um, always tell the truth. When I
Yes.
first started this group, um, one of the things I had to dispel was, when we started reporting really good results for a lot of people, when they would come on and say how good the results were, um, we got a lot of questions, and it's just like things are now. It's like, so did this really help you, or are you just a paid influencer trying to sell us on an idea? Are you just trying to come here and cause trouble? Are you trying to make something sound good, like a Yelp review that this restaurant is really good? And did the restaurant pay 10 people to come up and give 10 great results on your or reviews on your pizza? Um, and what I had to tell them was, in reality, the people that tell us it doesn't work for or that they had problems with, we learn a lot more from that than the people coming back and saying, wow, this really worked. It worked perfectly for me. It was like, holy cow. So we would get 10 of those people, and then what one would come on and say, well, it didn't work that well for me, and I don't know what these other people are talking about. So then I would interview them, or we would interview them and talk to them. We wouldn't chase them away because we'd say, you're giving us a bad name and you're giving bad,
Yes.
reviews. We need to figure out why it didn't work for you.
Yes.
And so please, we want the people that it didn't work so well for, we really want them to give us a review. We can learn a lot more from that than the ones that it worked for on that dose and that treatment regimen. And that's how we found out all kinds of stuff about these treatments. Um, because it wouldn't be working for somebody, and we would find out that, well, the reason it wasn't working was because you were using steroids, and the steroids block it. And they would be like, I'm not on steroids. I'm not on any steroid. I don't take prednisone. I don't shoot up steroids. I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't do. So then we'd be like, well, tell me everything every one of your prescriptions. Tell me what you have. So they would give us a list of 15 different prescriptions they're on for everything from what blood pressure to whatever. And then I would find out that, well, actually, they were using steroids and they were using a cream to put on their achy knee and rubbing in a cortisone cream. And oh, cortisone's a steroid? It's like, all right, lay off the cortisone for a week and try it again. And then it would work for them. And it would be like, well, all right, well, that's actually a blocker. It's blocking the treatment. And so we've done years of research, and every time some new drug comes out, we check it out to find out whether or not it'll block people's treatment plan, no matter what it is. If, Imitrex isn't working for them, maybe they're using something else that's blocking that. So we can help them with whatever treatment that they're using that isn't working well. We can help them research why it may not be working well for them. And one thing that you can't figure out even in clinical trials, and if the clinical trial shows that something works for 40% of the people and it's just barely good enough to get approved, um, maybe somebody needs to do some more research to find out why it wasn't helping the other 60% and changing it a little bit. When Eli Lilly did their phase 3 study for the Emgality injections, um, they started out looking at the single injection that was working for migraine. And had they not done the phase 3 study for the cluster dose, they would have done the exact same thing that they had always done for cluster patients, was pass down the migraine treatment to see if it might work for clusters. And they actually did that when, even after the cluster dose was approved, and we told Lilly and we helped done an awareness program for them. Because to treat clusters, it ends up taking 3 times the dose. It takes 3 injections once a month, not just one. So it would have been handed down to cluster people, and they would have been getting 1 injection, and it wouldn't have worked, and they would have given up on it. It would have been one more hand-me-down that didn't work for us. But Lilly did another study at a different dose and got it working. That it never, nobody ever would have found out about that, and it never would have come to market for clusters because the migraine dose didn't work. And what we've really learned is that every patient is different, and we can't do clinical trials to sort all of that out. Because, like I said, I've talked to over 10,000 cluster patients personally. I'm sure that I'm the only person in the world that's done that. But
Yes, yes, that's amazing.
but but what I learned is that every patient is different,
Mhm.
and it depends on what medications they've been taking for the last 35 years, what lifestyle they've had for the last 35 years, uh, what job they have, what medications they've tried off and on that worked or didn't work. They've been taking 4 Imitrex injections every day for the last 12 years as a chronic sufferer, um, because all of them end up needing a different dose. They need to adjust their dose a little bit to make it work. And you can't do those adjustments in a clinical study. Phase 3, they want 300 patients in there. So they select the 300 patients that they think are most likely to have success, first of all. But they can't do small adjustments on the dose for, you know, 25 of the people to get a lower dose, or 50 of the people that might need a larger dose, even if they're starting to look at the results and say, oh, this guy could use it. If we increase the dose a little bit, I think it'll work for this guy. But clinical trials don't allow that um, during the trial. They set the dose, they set the dosing regimen, they set all the parameters, they set the endpoints, and they hope enough patients fall into the positive group that it worked for them. But once it gets out there, sometimes the doctors will mess with the dose a little bit. But usually, if it sets the dose that's approved by the FDA, that's the dose you're going to write the prescription for, and not play around with doses. Uh, Other than if the medication is actually something that was used for something else and not for clusters. If, you know, a lot of people on clusters get put on verapamil, as an example, which it was designed for blood pressure treatments. And most of those people use like 80 or 120 milligrams a day. Headache specialists and people trying to help people with headache disorders, and clusters specifically, will prescribe it all the way up to 1,200 milligrams per day before it starts working. And then they're at those really high doses that it was never tested out for side effects for years, and then end up having some really bad side effects down the road. Uh, but they found something that actually helped them at that dose. So now what do they do? Do they get off of it and go back to their cluster headaches? Or do they worry about, well, if they have to cut out my intestines, they got to cut out my intestines. Um, I can't have the cluster headaches come back. So there are so many intricacies in all this research, and uh, so many difficulties getting something that works for people out there. Uh, yeah, it's been a really interesting 30-year journey for me.
Yeah, it sounds like how would I say, a very, very, very difficult journey, but also a inspiring one because you've helped so many people. Um,
Yeah.
I just feel like it's like I can see the medical field and all those things. I sort of get some of the things, but I think that we're missing creativity, iteration, you know what I mean? All these things to it's almost like you need a parallel system or you need something to speed things up, right? And your community sped things up for those people who were going through it and found you. And, I just feel like, like a society, we need to there's a lot of change that needs to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of change, and, it's like a lot of people don't even wanna talk to me about psychedelics, so then they don't talk to me about anything where I can even recommend non-psychedelic treatments. When I first started this, I could not get a doctor to respond to an email if it had the word psilocybin in it, because 30 years ago, and still today, a lot of them are worried that, "Oh, if that ends up in one of my emails that I'm interested in this, I'm gonna get in trouble. I could lose my license if I'm talking to somebody about using an illegal drug," and so I couldn't even get a doctor to return an email.
Yeah.
That has certainly changed.
Yes, it does. It
Uh,
has changed a lot, thank God.
it has changed a
Yeah.
lot, and I get a lot of doctors sending me the introductory email, a lot more than I could ever write, um, and, you know, but even then, it's like, "Look, learn your constitutional rights. You can talk about anything to your patient. You can talk about anything.
Yes.
Yes, you can't say, 'You should do this,' or 'Here's where you find it.' Well, you can say, 'Go check out Cluster Buster's website.'" Um,
Yep.
and you can give your opinion. And what we've been able to find and what any other patient community should do is if they see something online that interests them that they want to find out more information about, or ask their doctor, "Do you think this would work for me?" Uh, because believe me, doctors still do not like a patient going in and saying, "Well, what do you think about this? I read it on Google that this works." They're like,
No, they don't
"Do
like
not
that.
do not get diagnosed or treated by Doctor Google." And no, I'm not even going to talk about that. Um,
But this
you're
is the
going
thing, I think they
you're
should
going to
not be intimidated by that, especially not now where things are
right.
get I mean, it's like, I think it's just I don't know, it's like the egos have to be a little less. We all humble, we should all be humble. Illness is a gigantic mystery, and, we should be open to that and understanding that, and then just through honesty and freedom of speech, like what you're sort of saying is, "Let's talk," right? "Let's share."
Right. Right.
And the medical field is great, has saved a lot of, endless lot of amounts of people, but the other side of it, we need more to look at the other side of things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at this point, you need to how to find a way to fit into a broken healthcare system.
Yeah.
And there are ways. I mean, this issue about going to your doctor to talk about it, if you actually print something out and just hand it to them and ask for their opinion about it, then they've got it. They can read the headline and see if they have an opinion about it. And that's all you're asking for their opinion. If they want to say, "No, don't ever try this," or "That's really stupid," or "I've never heard of that. I don't know anything about it." Um, and they can certainly give their opinion on some research paper that they were handed. Um, so that's what we tell all of our community members to do if they want to talk to their doctor is print out any one of the research papers that's out there because we've got a lot of them out there, and just print it out, give it to your doctor, and say, "What do you think about this? Do you have an opinion on this, or don't you have an opinion on it?" Um, and doctors should under the Hippocratic Oath should tell you, and legally they can tell you whatever they want to tell you. And they can decide whether or not they want to even write it into your chart or not that you discuss this. But they should certainly be able to give you their opinions.
Yes.
And I don't think I've heard from anyone in all these years that came back and said, Bob, I gave my doctor your research paper he he fired me from being his patient because he wouldn't want to talk to me about it, or got a really bad um, answer back from their doctor. The doctors, they're all happy to give their opinion. That's what they like doing, is giving their opinion on
Yeah,
yeah, everything.
and there's a
It's their
lot of
doctor.
good
They want
doctors.
to do that. Yeah,
Yeah, like your doctor, like when you first started getting all these symptoms, that doctor that you had I mean, he sounds like an amazing doctor.
yeah, yeah. I I've had I have been lucky because I've found a lot of great doctors along the way, and there are some really incredible doctors. Um, I know hundreds of them. There are incredible doctors, and um, you know, the only one that the only one that I didn't like was the chiropractor that told me that if I can't cure you in three times, then you've probably got a brain tumor. Um, Other than that, every doctor has really cared and been willing to talk to me about all this stuff. The doctor that um, diagnosed me um, with cluster headaches, I went into his office for an appointment one time, and I didn't know he had been doing this, but he had been following Cluster Talk online or whatever, or had
Mhm.
visited my website and said, I walked in and he said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing good. And he goes, his first line out of his mouth was, Bob, if I could write you a prescription for psilocybin, I would write it for you right now. And that was 30 years ago. And he was willing to look at it and done the research and said, yeah, you're probably right. And if I could, I'd write you a prescription today for it.
Yeah.
Um, and he's still a very good friend of mine. He treated me for years. At one point, I hadn't seen him in a year, and I sent him an email. I said, hey, Doc, I just want to let you know that um, the reason I haven't been in to see you is because I've I've started using magic mushrooms, and I haven't needed to come in and see you since
Mm.
in over a year. And he wrote back just how happy he was to hear that it was working for me. Um,
That's
these
amazing.
doctors get into business because they want to help people,
Yeah.
and um, I'm able to give a lot of doctors success stories, which they really like to hear. So, um, but it's all you can't. One person cannot do this. You need a community. You need to build a community because they all have different uh, things in front of them that they're dealing with, a whole different set of circumstances and society problems, and they're all different.
Yeah.
But these diseases don't select stupid people; they select everybody. And so, when you go out there to build a community, you get a lot of people that are really creative, a lot of really smart people that are willing to dedicate portions of their day helping other people that have the same condition, whatever it is.
Right.
Because if you don't have it, you don't understand it, and you don't understand how life changing it is, no matter what it is. And um, the people in your community, you don't mind talking to 30 people on a Zoom call if they all have the same condition, because you don't have to explain yourself to them. So you can go right to the hard conversations about how do we help people in our community? And
Exactly.
honestly, it's what I tell everybody that advocates for people. It's like it's really simple to change, and rather than telling somebody I need this, just change it to we need this, and speak for the whole community and not just for yourself. And yeah, I need this, and so do a lot of my friends and family and people around the world need this. Can you
Yeah.
help me? And then it's whoever you're talking to takes a little bit more interest in being able to help a community rather than help an individual. Like,
Yes.
and so you need a really loud vocal community, and um, that's the key to building advocacy for the condition. So, and it
Yeah.
is possible. It's not easy.
No, I
It's
can imagine. Yes.
it
You did
you know
it.
it's
You did it. And, again, I truly appreciate, you sharing your experiences and your all the things that many of the things you've learned. And, yeah, it's just I feel like the future, I think we can make things better, and you've made things better, much, much better. And there's solutions out there. And yeah, illness will always be around and people will be sick. But if we can together, help each other, that's the key.
yeah yeah. Well, yeah. Hopefully, technology will improve to the point where it's going to improve on how we do things and improve our health. Um, hopefully,
Yeah.
this all this AI stuff going on has me scared to death. Um, you
I
know,
think
I
AI is
hear,
like an amplifier. It can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And, we just gotta be conscious of that.
yeah,
Um,
it's going to be used for bad and it's going to be used for good. But I told somebody this at conference I was at. It was like, a pickpocket used to be a guy standing on a corner in London, picking the pockets of three people in a night. Now that pickpocket is sitting in his basement and trying to pick the pockets of 1,000,000 people at once.
yes, yes, yeah.
And AI is making those pickpockets a lot better already. Um, and so I've always had some real hesitation about AI and who's doing it and what it's going to be, but what kind of a world it's going to be for my kids and grandkids. But I was just at a week-long conference in California with 250 people, all personal invitations to be at this conference. And it was um, 3 or 4 days of all-day workshops. It was a working conference with a lot of workshop and a lot of work being done, and it was all in regards to neurotechnology and what's happening, and this is all going to have an effect on research and development for all people with headache disorders and all people with all kinds of neurologic conditions and um, diseases and disablements. And um, but this whole workshop or this whole conference was about setting some guidelines and some ethics that need to be followed along the way and
Yes.
at every step of the way. Because, if there are 10 steps, like I said before, about somebody having a good idea and actually getting it to the patient, if there's 10 steps, if there's one unethical decision made at each one of those stops, all 10 of those ethical decisions falls on the shoulders of the patient at the end.
Yes.
Um, you know, it may not have a bad effect on the funding source, or it may not have a bad effect on uh, a company getting an FDA approval, but you know, maybe the 4 unethical decisions before it went to the FDA will change it, but all 10 of those will end up on the shoulders of the patient. Um, so luckily, and I was really impressed that they had a large group of us that have the living experience of this different neurological disorders and wanted to hear from the patients that suffer from them. And we often get left out of all of those discussions, all of those, you know, unless it's about cluster headache or headache disorders, funding sources don't come to me and ask about, well, what do you think about this device that I have that'll allow somebody with uh, uh, something wrong with their movement disorder in their leg. What do you think about this? You know, they don't come to me. But they should be going to other people that have those movement disorders and asking what it is they want and what it is that they need. People come up with an idea and then they think, well, who can I sell this to? And then you go to that patient and say, you really need this. And when they end up getting it at the end, it's like, you should have asked me because I don't want this. I don't need this improvement. I need this to help me better.
Exactly. It's like listening to the people actually going through
Listening
it.
to the people
Yeah,
going through it and ask them what it is that they need. Ask them what they want. Ask them if some side effect is too much for them or not.
yeah.
Um, it's like uh, some of these commercials on TV now I see where they list all the side effects, and um, there's there's one out there that lower limb loss may happen as a side effect.
Oh my god, yeah,
Thinking,
it's
okay, so you approve that, but you think psilocybin is too dangerous to approve. It's been used by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people for 2,000 years. And but you approve that. And then the other side of that coin is, uh, I talk to doctors about different treatments, and some of them, they all make decisions whether or not they're willing to prescribe it to their patient based on the side effects. And so I've talked to doctors who said, "Oh, no, the side effects are too bad for me to prescribe that." And listening to some of these commercials, it's like if I went into a doctor and said, uh, "I really think I should try this," and if he says, "Well, no, I can't prescribe that to you," or "I didn't prescribe it to you because um, there's a 1% chance that your left arm will fall off, and I can't do that." And I know that a cluster patient would tell them, "Doc, I'm right-handed. I can keep on living without a left arm. I can hammer a nail with my right arm. Give me the drug and let me
yes.
take the chance to see if I can live with that side effect.
Yeah.
If it'll take away my clusters, I'll live without my left arm." And uh, so, yeah, I mean, everybody along the way needs to talk to the patient, and you need a patient community to be able to do that and demand to be heard.
Yes.
So,
Exactly,
I,
exactly. I
well, I'm happy to help you in any way I can.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, again, what we're building is sort of like bringing people together and matching them with their symptoms, and I know that there's gonna be a lot we're gonna be learning, and, we wanna build it in the right way and carefully, and, you have so much experience that, again, I would love for you to, with your honest opinion, always, let us know what we're doing. Right now, I'm working on some, how to say, I'm writing some Substacks, just kind of like to clear our thoughts on what we're trying to build and what we're doing. And I would love to share them with you also. And yeah, because it's sort of like, my dad had MS, so I know. he had some of the most severe form of MS, and I've had eczema in my life, so, you know, illness has been close to me, and I really care about it, and, you know, so so yeah, any thoughts? I would love to share with you some of the things that we're doing and, and you can just, give us what you think.
Yeah, I'm happy to help because,
Thank you.
yeah, I'm a wholehearted believer in, building communities of patients to fight for what they need.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you need developed to treat eczema or MS or anything else. I know mine, but I know how to build a patient community, and I know the pitfalls that people fall into, and for building
Yes.
an organization and to build something that, um, you can come out with a common voice in that community.
Yep.
These groups, um, you know, if you pick a disorder, you'll find 30 different Facebook groups that talk about that disorder. And they all start out with as one. And then somebody in that group that's really motivated doesn't like how it's being run and can't talk sense into the person that formed it, because that was their idea. So they break off and they form another group
Right.
and get enough people in that community. And then somebody is not going to like how that one is being run, or somebody will get offended, and they'll start a third group. And then all those groups get split up and fighting against each other. They're all fighting for funding. They're all fighting for members. Um, they're all fighting for their thoughts and beliefs on that disease or disorder, uh, and end up spending more time fighting with each other than not. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, no.
I've had some, I've had a few people that thought I was competition and wanted to beat the competition, and I'm like, I'm not in competition with anybody. I need all the help I can get. If somebody else wants to start up a group and talk to people and help people, please do. I
Yes.
can't do it all. I can't help 40 million people with headache disorders one at
No.
a time. I can't do it. So by all means, do whatever, raise as much money as you can, do whatever it is you want to do because I can use the help. I don't need to be viewed as competition.
No,
And
that's silly. It's sort of like, I mean, again, it boils back to, people are suffering, right? It's, you know, we gotta do our
yeah,
part. But again, it's humanity and, personalities and humans, there's always challenges, right? That's where we wanna kinda carefully try to do a sort of like make it the best way so that we can avoid these conflicts. Healhub is sort of like a room that's your room, meaning it's sort of like you're inviting people in, you're finding the people that you wanna be, uh, talking to and things like that. So it's gonna be a little different, and then we're gonna be doing the matching. So we're gonna, in a very detailed way, match you with other people who are going through similar things. Um, but I know that
that's
there's gonna be a lot to learn.
yeah, there's a lot to learn and a lot of things you need to steer away from and other things you need to have available. And but if you become a really good resource, if you become that place for people to go, um, any of these other offshoots will end up, uh, using you as a resource, and telling their people in their group, well, you really need to reach out to this group at Healhub, and they have an answer for you, or maybe they can help you, or whatever, and just get you listed as a resource where people can click in to your site and your group. Um, but yeah, it'll and like I told you, each disorder is going to be different, and each one is going to have some people rise to the top and some people that don't like the way things are going. So moderation in each group is really important so that all your moderators know how to moderate that group. And the moderators need to be people with those conditions, if at all possible. Um, so
Yes.
they'll un- so they'll understand why people are asking questions, why people are needing what they need, um, and we'll know if you know. It's one thing to know if somebody's being rude to somebody else or offensive to somebody else, or offensive to the entire group. Um, those kinds of things are easy to moderate and remove and all that. But all the stuff blending personalities together and keeping everybody working towards the same goal um, is key. And the moderators need to do that, or whatever built in systems you have for doing that.
Right.
Uh, and so that everybody has the same goal in mind, just helping people and um, helping
Yeah.
people find where they can find help or talk to other people. I mean, that's huge. I mean, if you can match up people, um, that's a fantastic way of doing things. It isn't easy, and it's either time consuming now setting up a program that'll do it, or it'll be time consuming forever while you're doing it. But it is really important, and we do that all the time in cluster busters and try to match people up. Um, we've got a system called uh, cluster buddies where we hook up somebody that's new to the group or new to the diagnosis um, with somebody that's got a lot of experience and has been around for a while and knows how to answer a lot of those questions that somebody new has,
Hmm.
um, and has close to the same in the same diagnostic range, but whether or not they're chronic or episodic, or if they're um, just a caregiver. Caregivers need support, or if they're a patient and they've had um, episodic clusters for 15 years and now they switched over to chronic and they've been chronic for 2 years. We'll try to find somebody that has happened to before and can explain, the switch in the diagnosis, or somebody that's used to 3 attacks every day for the last 20 years. Now they're up to 7 attacks.
Hmm.
Who do I talk to? I need to talk to somebody that's got, experience in this one thing. And so we're able to find those people. But yeah, I wish I had a program to do it. But, right now we just have people trying to match up others.
Yeah,
Um,
that's sort of like the what we're building is the back end for that, so that you can get very, very detailed. You can talk about your story. You can talk about what's happening today or what happened yesterday, and you can also have a time journey, meaning that it can be, you know, it can be through time also, because a lot of times illnesses, maybe there's multiple things going on at the same time, and one time you're doing okay, and then you're not doing okay, and so, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, I
this
know.
has
So
been this has
yeah,
been really, really, I really appreciate you talking to me, Bob, and, um, yeah, thank you so much for this conversation,
yeah,
and,
you're welcome. I'm happy to help, and I will give you whatever time I can give you. It's
I would love
yeah.
that. I would love that. Yes, thank you.